So here is a little update on what we have going. Here are Aiden's valve covers for the 4.8 liter LS. All we did was we sandblasted them last night, cleaned them up, prepped them, and used some of this Duplicolor chrome paint. Now it's not going to look the greatest, but it's going to be a lot better than it was. So next item on the list, I pulled the engine apart. I found a little bit of rust in this intake valve here, but turns out it was just a little bit of moisture from sitting. There was a tiny little rust ring in the cylinder, but nothing on the exhaust port. The exhaust valves are clean. The rest of the intake valves look really good, and there's minimal leak down, just a little bit of dirt and rust on the valve. So I put a little bit of ATF in that cylinder and on the back side of that intake valve. So that will help clean up the rust, and I'm sure it'll be just fine once it winds over a few more times. Other than that, no surprises. The engine's looking good. We're just trying to make it a little bit pretty, and I don't know how some of you feel about LS engines, but it's hard to make them look pretty without a lot of work. So we don't have a lot of time, but we're going to do our best to make some pretty happen. So that's the engine where it's sitting right now. We'll have it back together later this evening, hopefully with some fresh paint on it. So with the help of Dominic, I've gone ahead and pulled the wiring out that I don't need. Essentially just snipped it for now. Snipped off the EGR wiring, the purge solenoid wiring, the rear O2 sensors, such things like that that we just don't need. And we've gone through the end of it here. All this is wires we don't need now, but may need in the future, like air conditioning and a few odds and ends like that. These are all our ignition switch powers. These are all our grounds. And these guys are the specifics for like the data link connector, fuel pump, tach, that kind of jazz. These are our battery positives. So what I've done is just ran into a good 14 gauge wire. I'll hook those up straight to the battery when the time comes to get it in the engine. So I left a nice long pigtail, and that's all I'm doing right now is joining all these wires together and then hooking up my data link connector. So this afternoon at lunchtime I can take this over to Integra and Dominic will flash the computer for me. So that's one more step closer, guys. Alright, so that's got my ground, my ignition switch powers, and my battery powers. So straight 12 volt all the time, ignition switched and ground. Next up is my data link connector, and I'm just going to lengthen these ones. That's my fuel pump, my vehicle speed, my check engine light, which gets 12 volts when something's wrong. Check engine light, fuel pump, data link connector, brake light switch, vehicle speed, and tack wire. Yeah, so if we take stock about where we're at, engine's prepped, ready for paint, got all the mud and junk off of it. Whether the paint sticks or not, at least it's going to look good going in. Valve covers are cleaned up and prepped, computers programmed, wiring harnesses modified. I got to pick up a couple of relays, and my fuel pump will be in tomorrow. After that, I do have to change the water pump. It's showing signs out the weep hole, so we'll just change the water pump. It had one of the gaskets on the front of the block was leaking anyway, pretty common on an LS from what I remember when I was doing retail work. Other than that, the engine mounts and torque converter spacer should be here on Saturday. Cross your fingers, Amazon. And spark plug wires, I broke one plug wire, but it's so we got a brand new set coming. They'll be here Monday, but that's not a big deal. I can jimmy that one wire together so we can actually fire it up and get it running. But other than that, we got to clean the accessory drive, give it a lick of paint. We got to clean up the exhaust manifolds, get them ready to go. And same thing, give the intake a wash because it's all black with mud, air filter housing, all that stuff. We're just trying to make it look as presentable as we can. And then from there, I've got 1, 2, 3 broken exhaust bolts. I got to replace some bolts, but I still need to get these ones out, so I'm going to work at getting those out tonight. Give the welder a little workout, and hopefully we make it happen. That's where we're sitting. It's Thursday evening, and from there we're going to make sure everything goes nice and smooth. Cross your fingers.